What I want to do today is talk about the national practice model and to try and remind folk that actually it is a practice tool. I do think there's a sense that the national practice model has, for many practitioners in particular, become to be seen as something of a process that they need to go through. And what I hope to do by the end of my presentation is to reinvigorate people and try and get them seeing it as a tool that they can use in their everyday practice. Just putting up that slide, quick quote from Lord Wellbeing, which I tend to include in every presentation that I do, but I think it's important just to bring everybody back, particularly with the practitioners, to the importance of their role, and actually it's their responsibility. We all have a responsibility to improve the outcomes for children, so I always like that to have that at the forefront of our minds as we go through. Child at the centre. I think this is a really key concept within the whole GIRFEC process, and one that we need to keep bringing ourselves back to, and particularly in terms and in relation to the looked after at home cohort of young people. Our motivation with regard to these young people should be, as it is for all young people that we work with, about improving outcomes, but we need to be clearer about where and what those outcomes are and what it is that we're looking to achieve. And if you think in terms of the arms of the spiral, where are we wanting that child to go in terms of the arms of the spiral? Are we wanting them to return to a situation where they are no longer subject to formal measures of supervision, that we are confident that we have improved their well-being sufficiently that we can remove them from supervision? Or are we looking at deteriorations and actually looking to move them on? And again, we need to be clearer about this, and we need to be focused in on actually what our outcomes are. Again, hopefully this will be familiar to many, and it links back to the point I was trying to make with the use of Lord Wellbeing's quotation, in that individual practitioners have a crucial role to play here. One of the key concepts in terms of GIRFEC that we're trying to put in is to get out of this referring on culture, constantly referring children and young people on. Every study that we do with children and young people who are looked after and accommodated in particular tells us what they are sick and tired of is being passed from pillar to post, from pillar to post. Our starting point needs to be, look at the immediate, for practitioners, need to be the immediate relationship that they have with young people and the responsibilities they have for taking action. We shouldn't constantly be outsourcing, we shouldn't constantly be trying to refer on, saying it's not my problem, it's not my responsibility. Responsibility starts with the individual first and foremost. I know that there are services that have these 5 questions pinned to the wall. Even those services where practitioners have these 5 questions as an aid memoir personally that they carry around with them, just to remind them of the importance of this and the fact that the responsibility and the role that they have to prevent this referring on culture. The Wellbeing Wheel, hopefully a concept and a diagram that you're all familiar with now. One of the points I can't emphasise enough is that in the early stages of the use of the national practice model, Wellbeing Wheel, the Wellbeing indicators under Shinari, is not an assessment. Part of the process is not an assessment. This is a tool for practitioners to start to gather evidence that can begin to inform their analysis and their assessment of the process. One of the key aspects of around this, and particularly for those looked after at home to remind practitioners about, is that children don't suddenly become looked after at home without any prior information. Increasingly now, with the introduction and implementation of GIRFEC and the identification of a named person, decisions about children being placed on supervision, there will be a wealth of information that follows them through this process. And increasingly, with the implementation of GIRFEC, that information at the named person stage in terms of children's records is being collected and collated and recorded under the headings of the Wellbeing. So there is a starting process for this. There is information there, and it is important that practitioners recognise that and consult that information in terms of them drawing up the child's plan. That we don't, each and every time, we come to hold a review. Each and every time we enter a meeting, we do not start with a blank sheet. These children have histories. They have records of contact and interventions previously. We need to be cognizant of that, and we need to take notice of that so that it informs our future action. The My World Triangle. I'm a big fan of the My World Triangle. I think its simplicity, or apparent simplicity, hides the sophistication and the usefulness that practitioners very much appreciate. But more importantly, in my own days managing services, one of the key factors that I found around the use of the My World Triangle is actually the appreciation by parents, carers, and children and young people in terms of practitioners using this tool. The language it describes, the language it uses, enables them to describe their world. It enables them to articulate the issues that are going on for them at that particular time. Equally, and crucially, it begins to give children and young people, families and carers, the language with which they can better engage with practitioners. We will know we've begun to get this right when children and young people are turning up at LAC reviews and they're quoting some of this stuff back at us. That's the aim, that's the ambition in this, so that we are engaging on an equal level with children and young people, their parents and carers, that we're not engaging in professional jargon and mystifying this process. As I say, in my days in practice, this was a tool that I know many of my staff found really useful and was actually able to share with children and young people, their parents and carers. So again, I would encourage you. The national practice model is not a process. It is a practice tool. There are people in this room who I know were intimately involved in the design and development of the practice model. It was designed by practitioners or used by practitioners. I think we've lost sight of some of that. We need to get back to using it as a practice tool. Another key element in terms of getting into the analysis and assessment from the information that we gather through using it is the resilience matrix. Within the GIRFEC team, I think we've acknowledged that actually, as initially described in our practice guides, the resilience matrix was probably not the most user-friendly. Some of the language in the original version, I think, was off-putting to many practitioners, and from our discussions around the country, we began to realise that it was probably the least used element of the national practice model. Again, in consultation with practitioners, particularly with colleagues in Highland and other areas who have been using this model for a number of years, we have recently rewritten the practice guide, particularly focusing on the resilience matrix and using some tools that have been used to good effect elsewhere. I think it's an improvement. I'm not saying that we're fully there yet. We may be able to improve it futurely, but again, the notes that will go out with this presentation contain some of that information, and I've got a handout that further explains resilience. The concept of resilience, I would argue, is central to our work with children looked after at home. We need to be promoting the protective environment around those children to increase their resilience, to mitigate against the adversity, and to minimise the vulnerability that they are experiencing. So we acknowledge that we perhaps haven't got the messages right around the resilience matrix in the past. We are looking to improve that. If you have practice examples in your own area that you feel please share them with us, so that we can then disseminate out across the country. Consequently, how it fits together. One of the areas, as the Minister mentioned this morning, that we will be legislating on is around the child's plan. This is where I think an effective use of the national practice model comes into its own, in terms of setting the objectives and setting the outcomes we are looking to achieve for these particular group of young children and young people, but also setting timescales for us as practitioners. We want to prevent the notion of drift. We don't want children languishing on supervision orders year after year after year with no effective intervention. we need to be articulating to each other as professionals, but most importantly, we need to be articulating to children and young people, their parents and carers, why they are on supervision, what are the concerns that we have about them, and crucially, what are we as practitioners wanting to see improve, and how are we doing that? Again, setting clear objectives and clear timescales within all of this. Finally, coming to an end, this is work in progress. Please get in touch. Please let us know what is happening in your locality, in your area. Let us know about challenges, but also let us know about things that are working so that we can share that information. The way to do that is through the Scottish Government GIRFEC website page. There you can find, there should be your one-stop shop for all things GIRFEC. Increasingly we are making that the resource to put things in where we become aware of examples of best practice. We're posting them on there, and we're posting links to there. Sign up for our newsletter. Again, that goes out on a regular basis. So copies were put around on tables of the most recent publication, the Wellbeing magazine that we've done. Follow us on Twitter. That's those of you who are Twitterers, Twitterati. We will be doing constant updates on that, highlighting activities that are going on, developments, again, examples. As I say, we're looking to share resources from across the country. We do want to hear from you. You know, what's working well, where are the challenges? So again, this is your access to the Scottish Government team. This is an interactive process that we want to begin. Finally, coming towards the end now, trying to tie things up, and because I'm a bit of a suit, there's a quote there from our head of unit, Boyd McAdam. I think this linked quite nicely to Lord Laming's quote that I put at the beginning. Again, looking at the personal responsibility of individual practitioners, the responsibility they have in terms of the ownership they have for the engagement they have with children and young people. I hope I've saved a bit of time. Last slide, and this will go out in the handouts. That's my contact details and contact details, links to the website. Do apologise, it's been a bit of a rush, but as I say, for some of you it may have been grandmothers and eggs. Please get in contact. Please let us know how you're getting on. Examples, as I say, of best practice challenges that you face.